Welcome to Imagination's Astrological Lunar Magic series. This week we're going to be looking at February 4th, 2021, last quarter moon in a Scorpio. But before we get started, I want to take a moment to acknowledge where this video is being recorded from, so let's have a watch. In the spirit of respect, reciprocity, and truth, we honor and acknowledge that together we live, work, and play on this land of the people of traditional Treaty 7 territory. The Blackfoot Confederacy, Siksika Kanai Pikani, the Tsuut'ina Nations, Iarhe Nakoda, and Region 3 Métis Nation of Alberta. So welcome to our last quarter moon in Scorpio. We're going to keep continuing with the concept of using both tarot cards and the astrology wheel for discussing our lunar magic for today. So let's go over and look at our wheel. You can see that we have over on the top right quadrant, the moon sits there in Scorpio. Now we have all of the lines and aspects activated from the moon out towards everything else in the chart. What we're going to particularly be paying attention to is the square to the large cluster in Aquarius, the opposition in Taurus, and the trine with Neptune. So let's start first with our Aquarius stuff. And apparently I lost my picture. 1 second. And we're back. So, as you can see up top here, we have moon in Scorpio. We have a large square to both Mercury, Sun, Jupiter, Saturn, Venus, and Aquarius. It's a lot of stuff going on. So let's look at what those would be in cards. The moon, as we will continue to learn, is the High Priestess in the Major Arcana, and Scorpio is represented by the Death card. We have the Magician representing Mercury, the Sun card for the Sun, Wheel of Fortune for Jupiter, the World card for Saturn, the Empress for Venus, and the Star card for Aquarius. So let's start first with our lovely High Priestess. So what is our High Priestess of the Major Arcana telling us? She normally is the figure in between of worlds, the guardian in front of the veil beyond to the other realm. Is represented by lunar flow and power and spirit, interior or intuition or subconscious, all these qualities. So when looking at our lunar magic, we have tapping into kind of the ebb and flow of the cyclical nature of the moon and its power and its wisdom. I consider this practice to be about aligning with lunar energies to understand how we are meant to be processing along the way. Not exactly meant to be, obviously free will is a thing, but looking at the energies and the thematics and having food for thought in how we want to progress or continue working with those energies. So our Death card, the Scorpio energy. In the Major Arcana, the Death card very much here is about death for the sake of transformation, being able to end the heralding of a time. You can see the king down here who has passed away. We have the Hierophant, pleading with death, but they can't make death go away. We have the family, and they can't make death go away. Death is a natural part of our process. It's something that we all must accept and that we all succumb to fate. What you can see in this imagery here is the dawn of the sun between the pillar towers. Now, on one hand, you could see it as a sunset. On the other hand, you could see it as a dawn, which I love about this card because it is technically about both. Death can be the sun setting into the night. Death is also the dawn at the end of the night. They signify endings and transitions into the next state. The death card is nothing but transition, more so. So when we look at a moon that's in the energy of internal intuition and subconscious and transformation, this is the main energy that is being affected around us. And so it is touching a whole bunch of planets. Let's go back and look at those for a quick moment. So it's a huge, huge cluster of planets right now that is sitting in Aquarius. Lots of stuff going on around the matters of trust, but we'll get there in a moment. Well, you'll get bored of the repetitiveness of me talking about Aquarius throughout these video series, I'm sure. But first, Mercury, and it's represented by the Magician card. The Magician is the individual who has all of the tools at his disposal to harness the wisdom, power, knowledge, emotions, thoughts, pragmatic things, and the desire to make his will or her will or their will or whatever terminology you'd like to use to come to fruition into this world. So right now we're having this Magician energy. What do we want to bring into the world with this Aquarian energy of wanting to nurture, of wanting to serve, of wanting to take care of the whole and the cluster and the community, about having trust in this transformational process being leading us to where we need to go, particularly based on what we are manifesting into this world, right? Magician energy. So it's Magician energy alongside of the sun because it's Aquarius season, which is just sitting more naturally in that time. The sun is getting stronger in its power. It's growing in strength. It's trusting that a new dawn, a new day, a new light, a new radiance on the world is coming forward, right? That's the time of this time period, is to trust that spring does come, that we will make it through the winter. The next thing we have is the Wheel of Fortune. It's also about trusting that with Jupiter in Aquarius, that this is the right time. And this is the beneficial time, that everything that is going on about what we want to bring into this world, that we believe that it's going to be able to come, that we have personal confidence in that it's also the right timing, and that it's the heralding of the end of a chapter, an end of a chapter in our time period and the beginning of a new. And I dare say, because of timing right now, we could very much look at this as a narrative of maybe going more matriarchal. I don't want to get into the total political ideal over this, but the Empress energy, we could say, becomes a more matriarchal path going forward. That doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be based on gender or anything like that, but Empress energy is about nurturing, caring for others, caring about beauty and aesthetic, and not necessarily in a vain way, in the we want the world to be beautiful, that we all get to enjoy it, and that when we see suffering or things that we consider ugly, that we work to rectify them, that we create bountiful harvests for all, that we are in tune with Mother Gaia, all that kind of narrative. And again, all of that comes under the energy of Aquarius. We're all gonna get so tired of that, but I'm probably gonna not be able to help myself with it. Anyway, trust. I know a lot of people talk about this card being healing. I really see it far more about trust, because it is so hard when you're mired in the scenario to have that kind of belief that it's all gonna be all right. And if you need to hear some messaging, this is not a promotion, but I'm obsessed right now with Pussifer's Bedlamite song and Maynard telling you that everything is going to be all right. Maybe a theme song that we need for this Aquarian time. And why do I bring this up? Well, that is because of the fact that, let me see if I can switch this. Boom. It's a square energy. And that means there's tension. That means there's this time for us to be hitting the gym, to working out. We're afraid of this transformation. We're afraid of dying. And it's a natural response, obviously. Everyone is afraid of dying. And we're not thinking that on a physical level we're going to die. It's that everything that we know feels like it's crumbling and dying around us, and we grip tightly to the life that we knew. We're having difficulties with standing in our personal power, believing that we can dream a new reality, and having that personal confidence. We don't know if this is the right time. It seems like everything is kind of messed up. It almost feels like instead of a chapter with a new beginning, like we might be finishing the book, but just so you know, we never actually finish the book. This is the never-ending story, basically. And it's hard to imagine a world that may be more empress in its foundation than the world that we live in at present. And so it's very, very difficult to be having trust. That is the nature of a square, is that we are having real hard time with all of this being the energy that we're, able to say and talk about logically, but internally, subconsciously, are we able to integrate this yet? I would say we may be struggling. We'd be like, sure, we can talk about it and say, yeah, I get it, I understand it, but do I really believe it on the inside of my being, on the internal landscape? Am I responding from a fear-based place, or have I this complete trust that this is where we're headed, and I can let go of my anxieties and allow the process to unfold with absolute confidence that we know what's coming? So that is one portion of what's happening in our last quarter today. We're going to head over back to that was a weird way to say that, our wheel. And if you look now to the bottom left corner, we have Mars and Uranus in Taurus. And that's an opposition energy. So let's go back over to our glyphs and see if I can bring that up for you there. So again, we have our moon and Scorpio, and then we have the tower is Mars, we have the Fool as Uranus, and we have the Hierophant as Taurus energy. So again, maybe we'll put these like this, as if they are two separate groupings across from one another, and that gives more of that visualization of the opposition. And I apologize if my screen is going in and out. I'm having some lag issues as I wait for higher speed capture cards to come into my life. Anyway, let's look at this. So basically we have the perspective of being deep within our own woundings and fears around death and the notion of death, rebirth, and transformation. On one hand, we can accept this and we know where we sit emotionally, but this perspective is having a lot of tension and issue around the process. Now, this is going to come in two ways. Let's look at this in the upright. We have the tower. Everyone freak out because it's not a beautiful looking image, but it actually is. This is perfect with the death energy, right? This is letting something come down to its utter foundation because it was not a good place to be. The tower could have been more like a prison, and that it was actually great for it to be destroyed so that it can be turned into something new, right? And by going through letting everything deconstruct around us, we have then the Fool, the new journey, the new reality, the new pathway, the new building, whatever it is, it's the new, and everyone freaks out over new because we don't know what it holds, and we are afraid of change, right? We are afraid of change, we think it's going to be painful, we think that we'll end up losing something. But this is the new pathway that we want to walk. We're having a hard time accepting it and processing it and internalizing it right now, but this is the energy that we're all on through that Aquarius, is that new chapter comes. But first, this needs to happen. And then really I get this down on the Taurian energy here. This is not just a reflection of ourselves in our internal landscape, our personal morals and values, our personal beliefs, our personal practices. Yes, those are all components, and we do need to think about those, but we need to think of the collective and the whole and the systems that are already deeply entrenched. Because the Hierophant is very much about our deeply established status quo. Basically, everything that's mainstream. So it's about questioning what serves us and what doesn't, and what should be deconstructed. Did I get that? Deconstructed. For a new way of being, new organizations, new systems, new laws, new whatever it is. It's really about having to let go of that old thing. And because this is in opposition to our Scorpio moon, it's really hard emotionally, subconsciously, to be willing and open to going to something that we think is going to be painful. Because Scorpio definitely goes down to the deep and depths and darkness within us. Scorpio and death energy is very much, this is where we're afraid that we'll never see the light again. This is where we're afraid that it's going to be painful and that I'm going to have to suffer. But just because of a transformative process doesn't mean necessarily that we have to suffer. And part of any suffering that may come through it is part of our growth, our challenge, our strengthening, our gym, which I will say many times. The butterfly must struggle in its process of transformation so as to be strong enough to fly away when it comes out of its cocoon. And we have a new journey to go on, and we really need to be looking at how we can deconstruct ourselves and society and walk forward together. It's an important thing that we all need to be listening to, but you can take practice in your own life and within your own area and within your own systems. But I encourage you to share this kind of thought and conversation with everyone at this point in time. So we're going to go back over to the wheel. The last thing that we want to look at is the Trine energy in the top left quadrant, Neptune in Pisces. So our Neptune in Pisces and Trine, we have an easy flowing energy between these two water bodies of Scorpio and Pisces. We have the Hanged Man in the major arcana, which represents Uranus, and we have the Moon card, which represents Pisces. Now, the other thing that we could take in here is the card Jupiter, which I'm going to throw underneath here, just a lot of funsies, because on a modern level, Uranus is the ruler of Pisces, and in a traditional level, it's Jupiter that is the ruler of Pisces. So I'd like to keep this energy here to acknowledge both the modern and the traditional practice, and to kind of look at both perspectives and how we may want to talk about them in this kind of energy. So an easy flowing energy means that it's quite easy for these individuals to communicate with one another energetically. So if we have basically a Scorpio accepting a death energy here, there is something deep down that says, I am ready for the self-sacrifice to attain enlightenment, or to attain perspective, or attain wisdom, or whatever word you want to get from that. The Hanged Man is kind of like the story of Odin, who you know, hangs upside down on the tree of life, and at the point of death discovers the runes, the mystical alphabet of the Futhark system, I believe it is. And I apologize if I'm wrong on that or the naming. But basically, it's about letting go of yourself, your attachment, in this metaphor, to life as you know it, i.e., choosing death as a process, right? To be able to become new, to see new. With Jupiter, I would say, as an underneath energy to that, if you want to go like foundation, modern application, it's also the right time yet again. The Wheel of Fortune is like, now is the time. There's no better time than this. This is the perfect time for this. This is the timing when it needs to be happening. And the last thing is the moon. The moon card, between our civilized and the wild, right? In this imagery, the dogs are, one is kind of more of a wild dog, and one would be one that, you know, is a domesticated dog. And it's these two dualities of nature, the crawfish that comes up from the bottom of the lake under the light of the moon. And the other thing that's brought up is the moon is seen as an illusion because it looks like it gives off light, but it actually doesn't emit light itself. It only reflects light back. So that is also an illusion. But you can see by the light of the moon, especially a full moon, it is still equally lit for you to walk that pathway even at night, even in the metaphorical internal landscapes of your subconscious, of yourself, etc. So part of this transformation can look at needing to step back, to take reflection and stock, to allow ourselves to let go, because it's the right time to do so, of things that are fake, are lies, are illusions. And I will admit that part of this is going to be my bias coming through here, and part of it is just what I get from this moon card because of that duality of wild and domesticated, is about our interplay with nature. What is no longer serving us? And I'm sure that there's a lot that can be answered there. A lot of what's in society is a lie, is a falsehood that keeps us trapped to being domestic or in servitude. And it's time for us to look at that, and it's time to look at how the systems as a whole interact and how they honor or take care of the natural world in amongst us having a domesticated life, should we be wanting that. You know, it's not to say that we have to go completely back to a natural, entirely lifestyle, but I think it's very much about needing to look at what the lies are between the construct of how we live right now and what we could be doing for the embetterment, again, of the collective, because it's very much about the collective in Aquarian energy. And when you get down to it, we intuitively know, right, what we need to let go of, what we need to get away from, what we need to utterly just let pass from ourselves and release and become something new. We have the perspective, we have the ability to see how to even go about that, and it's the right time to do so. So let's fucking do it, you know? Let us do it. And that can be within our own lives and within the lives of others as well. The fact is that this easy flowing energy is because of the water nature of the moon and death. And I would dare say also the death in the Hanged Man. A lot of this is very, very similar energy. And it's gonna be what can help us with all of the square and opposition. We could, on a surface level, get caught up in the anxiety that's induced by feeling like it's a long haul away or that there's too many obstacles. But what this really shows is that deep down we inherently know, right? We inherently have the wisdom that we need to change, that we need to be different. No more pretending like we can continue on this way. It has come time for the sacrifice and transmutation by the light of this moon. Let's get all whimsical about it. So, my dears, this is basically the energies that are going on for the last quarter moon. So, what could we possibly be wanting to do? I think it's important for us to ask ourselves, what are we feeling deep down? What would we not be telling other people that we're feeling? So that's a big one. This is not just like, oh yes, this is what I feel. This is what you don't want to actually acknowledge to anyone that you feel. This is work that you do not, unless you really want to, share with another person, because you have to be confident to be able to bring this to the surface. And most of the time we may feel uncomfortable even bringing it to the surface for ourselves. So I recommend doing this work with a moon and Scorpio energy to yourself, so that you can be the most vulnerable and most honest with yourself. And ask yourself about your fears around this process of transformation, around the fears of believing that a new paradigm, a new society, a new system built on Empress energy, however you want to call that, this Aquarian energy. What are your fears? What is chattering in your mind? And how can you work with that to strengthen yourself? And don't overwhelm yourself with things. Give yourself like 1 or 2 tasks, step by step. But the first thing is having that dialogue with ourselves on what our fears are, and instead of walking away from them or hiding from them, to want to have dialogue with them, and to want to have conversation, and to want to hold space, because they are what's going to inform us and help us actually be able to transform through this with a lot more personal strength and empowerment. So, with that being said, we will sign off for this series of Imagination's Astrological Lunar Magic Series. You can always check out the rest of the stuff I do over at imaginationwitch.com. Please like, share, subscribe. You know all the internet do's for the bots and for myself, so that I know what kind of content you'd like to be seeing in the future. It's greatly appreciated. I hope you have a wonderful last quarter moon in Scorpio.